temple. So shoe racks are here that I'm very familiar with. Being a Muslim, we do the same at a mosque. So the first place we stop, right outside the temple, is the bo tree. And I want to ask him, what does this tree symbolize for you?
Yeah, this is actually the main bo tree is located in India, in Buddha. That is a place where the Lord Buddha became the enlightenment. So this is a branch of that. We have brought one of a branch here,
okay.
And as a symbolize, we worship the bo tree.
And here you meditate here? Meditation.
Yeah, we do the meditation and we do the prayers and offering lots of things. They are like flowers and lamps.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, we symbolize the enlightenment of the Lord Buddha.
Beautiful. Something very important to keep in mind is whenever you do visit a temple, is you always have to remain facing the tree. You can never show your back to it, as it's seen as a sign of disrespect. So the priests here are called Soamin Mohanze, which means respectable sir, and that's what I'm going to attempt to call them throughout. If I make a mistake, no disrespect. Soamin Mohanze. Can you tell me, Soamin Mohanze, what do the candles mean?
The Lord Buddha did the enlightenment and gave us the bright side of our life to symbolize that bright side. So we just offer the lamps.
The flowers, what do they mean? The colorful flowers.
The flowers symbolize the purity and the most colorful things and the most higher thing what we can offer. So we offer the same things to Lord Buddha. We just offer the flowers to the bo tree also.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now we're going to take a look at inside the temple. So tell us what happens here.
This is a place where we worship Lord Buddha.
Yes.
This is a statue of Lord Buddha. We offer the lamps, the flowers, and some pure water. In the meal times, and we just offer the meals also. We just do the meditations and do the prayers and everything here.
What the pictures here? What do they mean?
They are the main followers of Lord Buddha when he was alive and which follows his teaching. Now we have photos of these followers and they have become the enlightenment also.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I noticed when I was sitting observing the prayer is that people had the food and then they came here and offered prayers. I want to find out a little bit more about that.
The first portion of the meal we offer to the Lord Buddha.
Yes.
That's the purify the first meal. And the second portion of the meal we offer to the Swami Nuanse.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have 2 meals per day, in the morning and the lunch. Before we offered, they gave us some teachings and we do the prayers.
They say knowledge is power, and that knowledge pretty much always comes through teachings, and those teachings come through books. So I want to ask, what kind of books are here?
Actually, these are the books which are related to various topics. You see, there's some books specially written for the housewives, and some of the books especially written for the gents. It's about the way how you can live in a good life and how you purify your soul, and some of the books about how to do meditations, how to do the meditation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everything you've done for your community here in Dubai. You know, this year is the year of tolerance in the UAE, and it's important that we share your story with people and let them know that you're here. Everyone's smiling, so I see everyone's happy. I wish you a blessed journey, and hope to see you again, inshallah.
I hope to see you, inshallah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khalid.
Thank you. There we are, a look inside the Buddhist temple in Dubai. This year in the UAE is the year of tolerance. A year of bringing all these stories to light and connecting everybody in ways that highlights the similarities.
The approach of the Buddha is a very experimental approach. Rather than him saying, you know, I'm telling you the absolute truth and you should believe it, one of the most significant teachings that caught the attention of the European intelligentsia back in the 19th century and even earlier was that the Buddha said, don't believe things just because they're told to you by spiritual authorities. Don't believe things just because they make logical sense, or because your family follow these customs and have these beliefs. But take a teaching, try it out, see if it's beneficial for yourself. So that fits in very much with the scientific ethic. You have a null hypothesis, you kind of create an idea, you try it out, you see whether it works or not. What's the result of that? So the fact that the Buddhist approach, right from the very beginning, and its very ethos, fits in with that Western scientific method, I feel is another way that makes it very accessible. So therefore, say for example, at Amaravati Monastery, we have a very, very broad and eclectic group of people who come to regular retreats and classes. So it's not certainly not just Asian people, but certainly many, many Westerners and Middle Easterners. Whether people happen to come from a Buddhist background, or Christian background, or atheist background, or Muslim background, or Hindu background. We have people from all different religious, say, ancestries and dispositions coming to meditation classes. And the way that we teach classes is that, and this was Ajahn Sumedho's, say, insistence right from the beginning. He said, don't assume that the people who come through the door want to be Buddhist. But they want to have an instruction in how to make their mind more peaceful, how to understand their life, how to live more skillfully. So don't teach in a way that assumes people want to be a Buddhist, or that they're fed up with being a Muslim or a Christian, or that they're going to be benefited by shedding their old religion and becoming Buddhist. No, it's important to speak in a way that completely respects people's own preferences in terms of religious disposition, spiritual inclination, or lack of it. And so that's one of the great strengths, I feel, of Buddhism and the mindfulness teachings, is that they can be put across completely faithfully to their sources, faithful to the Buddha's word, without saying, if you were wise, you would think like me. If you want to really straighten out your life, be a Buddhist like me. But rather, here are some tools that you can use, whether you're a practicing Christian, or a Hindu, or a Muslim, or you're a skeptical materialist. Fine, these tools work just the same. Like water comes out of the tap and it's water, whether you're a Muslim, or a Christian, or a Hindu, or you're from Alpha Centauri, wherever you're from, it's still water. So that the Buddha's teachings function in a very practical and accessible way.
So the way I like to think about the practices of Buddhism, I like to kind of think about it in two ways. One is the social aspect of my life, and one is the inner workings of my mind and body. So in the social aspect of my life is that I'm a monk, and I'm in a monastery, and I have my responsibilities, and I have a 67-year-old body that I need to take care of, and I travel, and all the rest of it. That's the conventional reality that I live by, and I try to do that well. So I try to be diligent in coming to morning meditation. I try to know the chanting. When it's time to do building work, I try to participate in the building work. I try to learn things to be more skillful. I try to read so that I'm more informed. And I have a social life, and same with you. You go to work, and you have your kids, you try to educate them, you try to train so that you're more skillful in whatever profession you have. You observe the civil code, the legal code, you try to live by the 5 precepts. These are the conventions we live by. And to do them well is very important. To do them well is very important because they give stability to our social life as much as possible. Not absolute, but they give stability to our social life. And that stability then is a basis for contemplation, or for observing consciousness, observing our life from an inner perspective. And that's the second kind of reality I like to, and Buddhism likes to think about, is that not only can I participate in a social life, in my social responsibilities, but also I can observe my inner life, can't I? I can observe my thoughts and feelings, I can observe my emotions, I can observe my reactions, I can look at the way I respond in certain situations. So I have this flow of inner experiences which I can be aware of too. So I can be at a committee meeting, as I was saying this afternoon, and I can be trying to present something to the board members of the committee, right, and try to do it well, and try to have all my notes there and so on. And also I can observe that I'm getting nervous, or I'm getting uptight, or I'm not liking what this person is saying, or I'm getting bored with the committee meeting. I can do both, right? And if I didn't do both, I wouldn't really have a full life. If I didn't do the inner work, I wouldn't have a spiritual life. And if I didn't do the outer work, my life would be a mess. So both are very, very important. And in the Sangha life, we would call that Dhamma Vinaya. So Vinaya, for a monk, is the social life that I live by. And the Dhamma is understanding the way things are, and specifically why I suffer, and the end of suffering. And so you have a different Dhamma, you have a different Vinaya, but you have the same Dhamma. You suffer like I suffer. Lay people suffer the suffering of lay people, and monks suffer the suffering of monks. And if you think monks don't suffer, forget it. We're in the same boat as you, right? And like Lompa Cha used to say, old people suffer the suffering of old people, adolescents suffer the suffering of adolescents. Mothers suffer the suffering of mothers, fathers suffer the suffering of... It's different kind of suffering, but it's still suffering, you know? And so we're the same in that way. Our Vinaya is different. So definitely, your social structures are different than my structures. Good social structures are based on morality. You know, they're based on good ethics. They're based on generous living, on compassionate living. So monastic life is based upon that, and hopefully your life is based upon that too.
And so just observing the silas is a very powerful positive factor that gives meaning, significance, and makes our life worthy of admiration. But from the perspective of the Buddhist teaching, it's not enough just to observe the silas, but one has to go on in following the path to cultivate the higher mind, the higher consciousness, and that requires some effort in meditation aimed at the attainment of samadhi. So that's why the verse uses the verbal form, jayantassa, one who is practicing jhana, the act of meditation aimed at becoming samahito, one who possesses samadhi. And so in Buddhism, we could say that the Buddha's teaching, it's somewhat like a pharmacy with many different medicines to fit different types of illnesses. So people have different kinds of mental afflictions, mental defilements. So the Buddha teaches many different methods or subjects of meditation intended as the antidotes to these defilements. And so we might say that our daily intake, the regular supply of nutrients that we take in through our regular meals, that might be compared to the practice of something like mindfulness of breathing, using a very, very simple method of meditation that lights up the contents of our mind, since when we're trying to focus on the breath, then all of the different thought formations, desires, inclinations, tendencies, impulses of the mind start coming into awareness. So that is what sort of helps us get acquainted with the workings of our mind, to come to better understand our mind, and to help us learn to quiet down the mind and to gain some degree of concentration. But then other mental afflictions start to intrude upon the mind, and when that happens, then one can resort to some of the other meditation subjects as a way of balancing the mind and clearing away those mental afflictions. For example, some people become prone, when they start to meditate, sort of unconscious or unrecognized states of anger, aggression, ill will, and towards others come into the mind. In that case, one could develop the practice of loving kindness meditation, the metta bhavana. In other people, and this is particularly relevant to monastics, states of sensual desire, sensual lust can arise. In that case, we can take up the meditation on the parts of the body, the 32 parts of the body, seeing how, though we look at the body sort of superficially with our ordinary sight as being beautiful and attractive, but when we start probing and examining into the constituents of the body, taking them one by one, we see that they're not so beautiful and attractive. And then a sort of general, this is like a strong tonic to energize the heedless or lazy mind, is the meditation on death. When we recognize that death is inevitable and we can never be certain when it's going to occur, that will give us a strong motivation for undertaking the practice diligently.
I'd like to just reflect on this idea of making things conscious, but before that, perhaps just to always remind you, and I'm sure you know this, is that the context of the Buddhist teachings is always in the context of a good social life, not a good social life in terms of going to Starbucks a lot, but a wholesome social life, a life where we are responsible in our family, we're morally responsible for how we live our lives. And so the ethical component of Buddhism is very important, and the liberal heart and the heart of generosity that the Buddha suggested they're really the foundations of a good meditative life and contemplative life. In a life which lacks a moral definition, which lacks a generous heart, can of course lead to a meditative life which is very narcissistic and self-centered and self-oriented, which isn't really the point of the business. So the taking of precepts, the living a life of truthfulness, non-violence, sobriety, communication which is sensitive and meaningful, a life which is not bound by corrupt mind states, a life which is not influenced by a lack of clarity, so like a sober life, like a clear life, a good life. This is a very important thing. And then the expression, the way we express ourselves in society through how can I serve, how can I give, how can I make your life one which is helps you to practice the Dhamma. This kind of living a life of goodness leads to a heart which has a lot of confidence, it has a lot of self-respect, and those are important factors in developing spiritual practice.
How can we understand the idea of suffering in a way that is useful? One of the things that we have to do is just to understand the suffering of ordinary life, not to be kind of blind to the fact that there are problems in life. Sometimes you hear people say, oh yeah, I don't have any suffering in my life. And of course, to me, that is just a delusion. Everybody has suffering in their life. Why? Because everybody attaches. When you attach to something, there's bound to be suffering coming along with that. It's impossible to have a life without suffering, unless, again, you are an arahant, you're fully enlightened. That is really the only possible case. So that's the first thing, just to be honest about what life is about. But the second thing to do is to remember that understanding suffering fully is actually part of the insight onto the Buddhist path. Yeah, so understanding suffering fully really starts when you start to practice these teachings and you start to kind of go deeper into your meditation practice. And one of the beautiful similes that is found in the suttas used by the Buddha is where the Buddha says there's two simile of the two friends that come to a mountain. Yeah, they come to this mountain, and then one friend kind of stays at the base of the mountain, the other one goes to the top. Yeah, and then the one who goes to the top, he kind of looks out. He said, wow, I can see so much from up here. And he shouts down to his friend, yeah, listen, friend, I can see fields and villages and houses and forests and kind of everything from this top of this mountain here. And then this friend at the bottom of the mountain, he says, no way, I don't believe it. There's no way that you can see all that stuff from the top of the mountain here. And then this kind of friend on the top of the mountain, he gets a bit kind of exasperated. Yeah, I'm here, I can actually see it. So he goes down to the bottom, grabs him by the arm, pulls him up to the top, yeah, and says, okay, look, what do you see? Oh yeah, he's a bit sheepish now. Yeah, I can see villages, fields, and all these kind of things. And the idea of the simile, and this is the idea of how to understand suffering here, is that once you climb this mountain, and climbing the mountain here is a simile for meditation practice, yeah? You go deeper and deeper in your meditation. It's like climbing the summit of samadhi, getting out of the world, climbing to a higher realm, if you like. And once you go to the higher realm, only then can you see the landscape underneath properly. Only then can you understand how the world actually works. So you practice your meditation practice, yeah, until one day you are so above your ordinary life. You have the bird's eye view, the eagle's eye. You look out at the world and you see the sensual world, especially for what it actually is like. And when you see it for what it actually is like, because you have the view above the world, you've given up the world in a sense, then you can start to understand what suffering is about. Only when you come up to that high kind of level, that is where you start to understand these things properly.
And if we get angry, if we've developed mindfulness and clear comprehension, I'm talking about ongoing mindfulness, the kind that you can develop like when you can follow your breath in, and then also when you can follow your breath out, and you can do that at least one time. So when you can do that at least one time, you have the ability to be able to be tracking mindfully on a moving object, and to be able to see conditions that are there, or walking meditation, like lifting up one foot and lowering and putting down. It seems in our regular life these things might be useless or not connected, but in fact they are connected. Because you start to be able, with this ongoing mindfulness, like this, that's tracking from moment to moment, you start to be able to see how things are happening. You start to be able to see them arising earlier, not only at the moment of the explosion, but with your mindfulness you can actually go back and see what happened with that. What did that come from? What condition was there inside myself that made it possible for this to happen? And then you can go to work on that condition. Going to work on that condition, probably it won't happen in exactly the same way again. It doesn't mean your work is necessarily going to be all completely done, but you will get confidence, and you'll understand how the process works, and you can apply that to other things. So many things, in so many ways. Then you can start to gain that confidence and feeling of safety. I have this path of practice. I have these skills. I have these abilities. I know how this works. I know how this path works. And you start to develop kind of